Welcome back to another update video for Super Mario 64 on the Game Boy Advance. Life has been rather busy recently, but I've managed to find the time to add a variety of new features. Let's go through them. First up, Mario's model has been completely reworked, again. The new model has improved proportions and better textures. In particular, the limbs have been made wider, so they are easier to see at low resolution. At 133 triangles, it beats the model from the original Super Mario 64, which had 764 triangles, by almost 6 times. That sort of asset optimization is needed too. The Game Boy Advance has only a single core 32-bit processor running at 16 MHz, no GPU to render polygons, and no support for floating point arithmetic. It depends very much on how one chooses to measure it, but it's not unrealistic to say that the Game Boy Advance has somewhere between 10 to 50 times less processing power than the original Nintendo 64, depending on the workload. Animations have also received some work. More keyframes have been added, especially for jumping animations. Notice how when triple jumping, Mario starts with his arms back, then enters a tuck during his flip, and then returns to a falling pose on the way down. The ground pound has also been added. As well as wall sliding and jumping. The camera has also been improved, with more dynamic motion, making Mario's movement easier to read and making most of the fully 3D engine. I've also been working on a skybox, or rather, a sky background. It is not mapped in a physically correct manner, but keeping it as a tiled scrolling background makes for a nice performance win. I'm taking advantage of the Game Boy Advance's limited direct memory access hardware, otherwise known as DMA, to draw the sky to the frame buffer as quickly as possible. All in all, it turns out to not be meaningfully slower than just drawing a single colour to the screen, and definitely gives the game a sense of place. Onward to other things. As we approach the castle, you might notice a set of doors. Transitions between stages now work. There's even a little animation to go with it, although it needs quite a bit of work. Depth sorting still has a few issues that need fixing, hence the strange clipping of the door against the door frame. In the castle, we can see that several doors to stages already exist. Right now they lead directly to their corresponding stages. I've yet to implement scene culling, so parts of the scene cannot be enabled or disabled depending on where the player is yet. I've also implemented a health bar. It's quite rudimentary at the moment, but does respond to full damage. Sadly, I've not had the time to work on reducing a fine texture warping. Solving the problem without a performance hit is proving to be complicated, but I'm currently in the process of redesigning the polygon rasterization code and have a plan to address it. At some point in the future I hope to do a deep dive explaining the technical aspects of this project, but right now I'm waiting until I've settled on a design I'm happy with. Stars, or at least a very primitive version of them, have now been implemented. There's a short animation and then the player is kicked back to the castle, but not much else. there's still lots of work to be done here. Last but not least, I've had several more skeptical folk implying that either this project might not be real, or if it is real, that I'm cheating somehow, such as by speeding up the emulator. Well, I'm happy to report that the game plays just as well, which is to say not very, on real hardware too. Here, I've loaded the ROM onto a flash cart. If you ignore the fact that I've had to replace the screen after the backlight broke a decade ago, which obviously has no bearing on the performance or behaviour of the console, this is 100% original Game Boy Advance hardware, playing a very primitive and unfinished remake of Mario 64. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and thank you to anybody at Nintendo watching. This project is a bit of fun, a challenge to myself, and will never be released. Please don't DMCA me, but if you do, well, I've still ended up with a half-decent Game Boy Advance 3D engine to make my own games with.